The Falcons made a trio of picks in round 6 to wrap up all of their selections in the 2024 NFL Draft. So we're going to break down each pick they made, and then we'll wrap up by looking over their entire draft class. But let's start with the first pick they made in round number 6, which was Alabama running back Jase McClellan. Now, our very own NFL draft expert Tom Downey had him ranked as the 21st best running back in this class with a 239 overall ranking. You can look at the scouting report here as I'll fill you guys in on my own notes on him. The 4-year Alabama running back really only got 1 year to be a starter, as he was, well, like all running backs, in a very competitive running back room. But in that one season as the starter in 2023, I think he was a bit of a disappointment for Nick Saban's Crimson Tide. 180 carries, 890 yards, average less than 5 yards a pop, 8 total touchdowns. Now, he unfortunately battled injuries throughout his entire football career, tore his ACL early at Alabama, and then in 2023, he battled a foot injury at the end of the season, and he never really broke through as the Jahmyr Gibbs and Najee Harris replacement that the Crimson Tide were hoping he would be. Now, the Athletics' Dane Brugler had this to say on McClellan. McClellan lacks a true distinguishing trait to separate him in this running back class, but he has functional size, quickness, and contact balance to be a quality backfield option if given the chance. His development as a receiver and blocker might be the difference maker. Now, I'm not super over the moon about this selection. I don't mind going with the running back. When you get to day 3 of the draft, it's tough to find really good players at positional needs. And if you love best player available, you got to die with best player available. But I didn't feel like that was really Jase's calling for the Falcons. One, they've got Bijan, they've got Tyler Algier, but you can never have enough depth at quality positions like running back. But if he's not going to bring anything new to the table, which is very little receiving experience, not a very good pass protector, what does he bring, right? If you're looking for something that you don't have in Bijan and Tyler Algier, which those guys cover a lot of bases, Algier in short yardage situation and Bijan in, well, everything basically, I just really don't see what Jase is going to bring to this running back room. If it's not special teams abilities, which he was never asked to do at Alabama all that much, then what is it? Now, we're going to look at the other selections the Falcons made in round number 6, but make sure you are subscribed to the channel for the best NFL draft coverage. I'll be dropping my complete 7-round draft grades for the Falcons in an hour or so once the draft concludes. So don't miss out on that video, along with other types of content we're going to have going out here over the next few days as the NFL draft really starts to wrap up. Now, the next pick they made in round number 6 was the very next selection, and that was Illinois' wide receiver Casey Washington. So the Falcons at this stage were looking to maybe bring in some offense after going with a lot of defensive players earlier in the draft. And I got to be honest, well, let me first tell you about Casey Washington, and then I'll give you my reaction to the pick. I want to bring up my notes here so that I don't miss a thing. But Casey Washington, originally from Texas, was a 5-year guy at Illinois. He never really emerged as a truly productive wide receiver, but I'm not going to hold that against him. It's not like the Fighting Illini are pumping out NFL quarterbacks year after year. His final year in Urbana-Champaign, though, 670 yards, 13 yards of reception, and 4 touchdowns with 2 drops to go along with it. He was a participant at the East-West Shrine Bowl. The write-up from Dane Brugler on Casey Washington reads, overall, Washington is a sleek, speedy athlete with secure hands to be a possession target, but he struggles to create consistent separation and needs to prove himself on special teams. When you get to day 3 of the draft, I really look for 2 qualities especially: special teams value and overall character makeup. When you get to the NFL, you're no longer the fastest and the strongest athlete like you likely were in middle school, high school, and probably college as well. So what can you do to separate yourself as a day 3 pick? Special teams is a great way to break through, and then just being a guy that people love having around the locker room that just tends to stick around. Casey Washington maybe has that role waiting for him on special teams. He ran a 4.46 40-yard dash. So solid speed, but not the fastest cat we've ever seen. But to be truthfully honest with you guys, I wonder if Atlanta picked the right Illinois wide receiver. There was another guy who went to Illinois named Isaiah Williams, who I was a much bigger fan of. And I wonder if the Falcons maybe swapped up the wrong Illinois wideout. But Casey Washington definitely fills a bit of a need for the Falcons at wide receiver. They just need depth altogether. I did not expect them to leave this draft without going with a wide receiver. They maybe waited a little bit longer than I thought they would, all the way until pick 187. But best of luck to Washington in camp. He's definitely going to have to fight for a roster spot after a couple of other acquisitions made at the wide receiver position. Now we're going to look at the Georgia Bulldog that they took to conclude their 6th-round draft picks in just a moment. But first, I do want to fill all of our viewers in on our sponsor today, which is Game Time. If you are looking to catch a Braves game, maybe a playoff basketball or hockey game, get started with Game Time today because they're going to have the best deals at the lowest price guaranteed for Falcons fans. So let's say you want to go see a Braves game and you don't want to break the bank to do it because we know the Braves are a pretty good baseball team unless you've been living under a rock. Well, then download the Game Time app and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Now, I've put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. They also have tickets for concerts, comedy shows, really anything under the sun in your local area. So download Game Time today and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Shout out to Game Time for supporting us here at Chat Sports throughout the entire NFL Draft. And if you want to get set up with an awesome ticket deal, visit Game Time today. Now, the third and final pick the Falcons made in round number 6 at 197 was Georgia defensive tackle Zion Logue. So a longtime Georgia Bulldog, was there in Athens for 5 seasons, only a 1-year starter, which it's hard to hold that against him because they've had so many great and dominant defensive linemen at UGA. Now, last year for Kirby Smart, 17 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and half a sack with 2 pass breakups. Here's what the Dane Brugler write-up has to say. Overall, Logue offers 2 gapping skills and is better than what his stat sheet suggests, but he might not be disruptive enough to distinguish himself at the next level. Now, Brugler had him as a priority free agent, and the Falcons took him at round 6, pick 1 something, but regardless, I wonder if this was a little bit of a pander pick. Nothing against Zone. I don't want to take away from his awesome day getting drafted by the hometown Falcons. But you knew that there was pressure on Terry Fontenot to maybe win the fan base over a little bit. And recency bias is a real thing. So what do you know? The last pick in the draft is a Georgia Bulldog. And maybe that's what the fan base will be thinking of, and not the first pick in the draft the Falcons made. But ultimately, if you're really looking for a takeaway from this pick here, it's tough to be too critical on round 6 and round 7 selections. But I think we can look at all the picks the Falcons have made so far. It gives us a decent indication as to what the Falcons maybe have in store once the draft is over for filling out their roster via free agency. And I don't think you're going to see a Calais Campbell re-signing or maybe even a Bud Dupree re-signing because Atlanta has targeted the defensive line and somewhat pass rushers, but not enough in my opinion, to round out the 2024 NFL Draft. So Zion Logue, the third and final selection in round number 6 for the Falcons, started off with running back Jase McClellan. Then they went with Illinois wide receiver Casey Washington. And now in round 6 out of UGA, it is defensive tackle Zion Logue. Now, as it always began, round 1, pick number 8 was Michael Penix. Then we got to round number 2, where the Falcons traded up for Clemson defensive tackle Rook Aroro. And then in round number 3, we saw the Falcons go back to defensive line with Braylon Trice. Fast forward to the earlier portions of today's draft in round 4, coming out of Oregon, they went with defensive tackle Brandon Dorlus. I can stop right there and say defensive line, defensive line, defensive line, and then another defensive lineman, right? We can throw the selections on screen for you guys unless you are not keeping track at home. And then to conclude their day 3 selections, they went with Notre Dame linebacker J.D. Bertrand, a local guy from Alpharetta. Makes you wonder if their solution to pass rush is to kick Caden Ellis to outside linebacker, because now they have 4 inside linebackers with Bertrand, Ellis, Troy Anderson, Nate Landman, and then, like we just went over, Jase McClellan, Casey Washington, and Zion Logue. So grade the picks the Falcons made, A, B, C, D, or F. I'm going to give you guys my final draft grades video in a short little bit, so stick around for that. But be the host for a moment and give me your grades down below in the comment section.